Richard Morris. I'm a 9th degree black belt in karate and taekwondo, and I've been teaching martial arts since 1971. And I'm going to bring to you the perspective of being a martial arts teacher, one who's focused his entire career on self-defense. The reason I have is I'm also a Fort Worth police officer, and I have been for 30 years. I've seen what it's like to see people that are victims of crime, and I myself have been victim of crime. I want you to be able to learn what to do and how to keep your head level during an assault or an attack. While I will share and teach you some physical application, the most important thing I want you to get would be the concepts and the principles that are involved. We're born in this world with a mind and body and spirit in one package. You develop only your mind, you're very intelligent, but you're maybe physically weak if you haven't been physically trained. If you're physically trained but you don't develop your mind, then you may be very strong, but you can't think yourself through tough situations. So I want to teach you how to develop your mind, how to develop your body, and also how to develop your spirit to get ready in case you were to be the victim of an assault. Now, there are two types of capture. The first kind is a physical capture. A physical capture is like someone holds you, or if they grab you, or if they pin you into a place. Maybe even if you go into your car and you haven't locked the doors before an attacker comes, you're trapped and you're physically captured. The second kind of capture is also very important, especially for women, and that's the psychological capture. In other words, you'd better not do this or I'll leave. You better not do this or I'll beat you up, and so forth. Those type of intimidations can give you a sense of insecurity and low self-esteem. I'm going to talk to you today, as we go through this lesson, mostly about the cognitive things you can do, and I'll show you a few physical things. Then we have some other routes of things that you can do if you wanted to get physical practice. The first of these is learn about perception, to be aware. The second, I want to teach you how to prevent being in a bad situation in the first place. Be proactive, in other words. I'm going to teach you how to plan for your safety, and I'm going to teach you how to prepare. The way you get prepared is to plan and to also get yourself in good physical condition. We're going to enjoy this journey together. I've taught this program to literally hundreds of thousands of women across the world, and I hope it helps you. The first of the 4 P's would be to perceive. I think we have to understand and realize that anything good or anything bad could happen to even the best of us. So we have to be prepared and know what to do in case we were thrust into that kind of a situation. It's not always by choice, so we have to understand the physical limitations. That's our physical limitations. For example, the clothing we wear, the shoes we wear, the time of day that it might be, the physical limitations because of the weather. There are different things that you do in cold weather than hot weather. We also have to understand the physical limitations by our environment. Am I in a closed-in space, or do I have plenty of room to run? Am I by myself, or I'm in the midst of a crowd? Those things do make a difference. Another thing, you have to be aware of the perception that you leave others. A good friend of mine, the late Dick Yaws with the Fort Worth Police Department, once said that we have to be careful of victim proneness. We have to learn not to be prone to be a victim. We have to learn to stand tall and to look confident and to stand straight, to have our shoulders back. Learn how to look people in the eye without glaring and staring, and also have that confidence. And the things that I'm going to show you today, I believe are going to help you. You have to be able to look at people when you're talking with them in the eyes. If I'm walking down the street, I want to be able to look that person in the eyes and then move away. But don't look down, don't look afraid, don't shrug your shoulders, because the bully picks on the weak. The second P that we're going to work on today is to prevent. To prevent being in a bad situation in the first place. For example, if I know that I'm going to be going out, it's better to go with a friend. If I'm going to be going out at night, then I want to make sure I wear comfortable clothing, good shoes, something I could run in if I had to. A lot of women that I've had as victims of robberies, for example, have had high heel shoes and tight clothing on where they were unable to run, unable to get away to safety. I think we have to prevent being in those bad situations as much as we can and prepare that way. Another thing is to stand properly, and I stand differently than most martial artists, and I do it for a very good reason. I've found through all my training the easiest thing is to stand with your feet slightly apart and your hands in front. I begin in what's called the monk's position. If I have somebody approaching me and it looks like there may be a threat, I don't want my hands by my side, or I don't want to clutch my hands here. I'll have my hands in front, my left hand over my right hand like this, and that way, because most people punch with the right hand, so I could have the left hand ready to block and to protect myself. And so by having my hands in this position, my hands are up and they're free. We're going to work on this in a little bit on how to actually just block strikes. But then, if they become more of a threat, I put my hands in front of me this way. It forms a triangle where this is towards the head and the elbows are just outside of my rib cage. I don't want it here, I don't want it here, I don't want it here. I want it just like this, and I want my hands just slightly cupped with my thumb in. This allows me to protect myself, and I also have the balls of my feet is where I have most of my weight. And that helps me, what we call in a Chinese chi, or in Japanese ki. It helps me have good core strength in the position I'm in. Now, by staying in a position like this, you're in a better, it's better to be able to prevent those punches and strikes from coming at you. Another thing is invest in safety. Now, while it's good to have locks and burglar alarms and cell phones and so forth, all those things are important. But the most important thing that you need to invest in is your time in physically training and going through these concepts as I've spoken of earlier. Now this time we're going to talk about making a plan. I use the acrostic map, or make a plan. Again, as Zig Ziglar says, that if you plan things out, you have a greater chance of being successful. It's like when I go somewhere, if I'm going on a vacation, I'll use a Mapsco or I'll use a map and I'll sort of plan my route. I think it's very important to do that. It's also important to do that because that way you know where you're going and where you may have help along the way. You know where the gas stations are, know where the police stations are, and so forth. I think it's also very important to always know where you are in case an emergency were to happen. I take young police officers as we're driving, and we'll drive and talk, and all of a sudden we'll stop in the middle of the block, and I'll say, okay, now let's pretend that I'm being shot at, and I've been hit, and I can't help you. Where are we? And boy, do their eyes get big. We all have to learn to watch for street signs, for mile markers, and for exits and so forth on the freeway. That'll be a terrific help. I want you to start doing that. It's very helpful. Another thing is we want to be careful not to get tunnel vision. When we come outside of a store, for example, maybe you're looking for your car. That's called having a hard gaze. You find in and focus on your car. As you walk towards your car, don't forget to look around and see the surroundings. Open your eyes, wide gaze, and scan the parking lot. That's very important. We had a young woman in Tyler, Texas a few years back that was walking to her car. Once she saw the attacker, it was too late. It was caught on videotape in the parking lot of a Walmart. And she ran to her car, he caught up with her, and he ended up abducting and, of course, killing her. We have to learn to be prepared, know the route, and have that wide gaze as well as the tight gaze. We need to know how to keep a safe distance from strangers. And if I have that wide gaze and I'm focusing and looking around and keeping my perspective open, then someone comes toward me, I know I can go back into the store, I have a plan, I've got to go back into the store, or I can get with this crowd of people, or maybe even in the first place plan to have someone with you as you go. I think that's very important. Now, I've been teaching how to keep from going into psychogenic shock for many years now. Psychogenic shock is a fear-induced shock, and it causes a great physiological response. You can literally be scared to death. What happens, it causes your blood vessels to dilate, your blood pressure to drop, and you can even pass out. What I want you to do is to learn how to do these few things, and it'll make a difference. The first is to keep your eyes open. If you keep your eyes open wide, you have a greater ability not only to recognize and see the things happening around you, but your brain works differently. When your eyes are closed, you're using a different receptor site in the back of your brain. If your eyes are open, you have a different, again, that receptor site that helps you be logical. When you close your eyes, that's when you can fall asleep because you're getting into more of a dream type state. Even if the attacker says, don't look at me, if you can keep your eyes open even a little bit, it'll help you from going into shock. The second thing is to remember to breathe, to take deep breaths. Breathe in your nose and breathe out your mouth. By breathing, it helps circulate the oxygenated blood. If your blood doesn't circulate oxygenated blood, if it's not oxygenated, then you don't get the much needed oxygenation to your brain, and you get very lethargic and maybe even pass out. So you need to keep your eyes open, and you need to breathe and bend your knees and elbows. Now, the reason you bend your knees and elbows is not just to let you be able to run, which is important, or to have good stability, which is important, or to be able to block and protect yourself. Of course, that's important. But if you lock your arms out and lock your legs out, you can pass out. Because the circulatory system means your body, the vascular system moves in a circle. And if you lock out your arms and lock out your legs, it's like stepping on a water hose. It keeps the water from flowing. When you lock out your arms and legs, it does the same thing to your vascular system. So keep your elbows and knees bent, and that way you have good circulation, again, for that oxygenated blood. Another thing is you want to make sure that you are physically prepared. Get enough sleep. Don't drink too much caffeine. Don't use drugs and narcotics and so forth. It doesn't help you. You want to have a good, clean, healthy body as well as a healthy mind. If you'll do that, you'll be able to protect yourself better. Now, the next thing is visualization. In 1984, the Russians, they got prepared for the Olympics with 3 different test groups. And for example, let's say soccer, just as an example. They had 3 test groups. One that practiced physically all the time. The second group practiced physically until the last month or so, and then what they did is they spent half the time physically practicing, half the time thinking of the process, and the third test group spent the same amount of time practicing physically again until the last few months. In the last few months, they didn't physically practice at all. As a matter of fact, all they did was think about it. And here's the strange thing. Out of the 3 test groups, the ones that they all 3 practiced whatever that physical sport was until the last few months. One that practiced physically the whole time did the poorest. The one that did half the time physically practice and the other time thinking about it, the other time doing that, they actually performed better. But the one that did the best was the one that didn't physically practice at all. Now, I'm not saying don't physically practice, because remember, they all did the practicing at first. But what they did is they started thinking through the process. And if you'll do that, it helps you. As a matter of fact, they were in better aerobic condition as well as physical muscularity, and as far as being prepared for that sport. Needless to say, they didn't have the injuries the last month as well. So we need to learn to think as well as physically participate. And visualization, we first want to do what I call preview. Jack Nicklaus did this, a great golfer. You think, what am I going to do when I get there? For example, he would have someone walk the golf course, and he would have his caddy would walk it to know exactly how many steps and whether it would go to the left or go to the right to be able to reach the hole. He had it planned out, and while he was on the airplane going over, he would think these things through and literally see himself walking through that golf course. This visualization helped him. It also will help us. We need to see ourselves thinking, what would I do if I were in a fire, or if I were in a tornado, or if I were in a wreck, or if someone grabbed me? People say, well, Richard, isn't that negative? I think if you're physically and mentally prepared, it gives you a better chance for positive results. I think it's a good idea. That's why we have fire drills, the stop, drop, and roll. That's why we have tornado drills and so forth, is we learn to be prepared in the midst of that emergency. What would I do if someone knocked on my door in the middle of the night? What would I do if someone came up to my door? What would I do if is a very helpful tool, I believe. We need to learn then how to view. You see, when you have the previewing process, that's when it's safe and you can think these things through. But then you have the viewing process. That's when you're in the midst of it. That's when it's happening to you. That's when they are grabbing you. They are running towards you. The car is coming towards you on the freeway. This is when it's very important to do those things that I spoke of earlier. Breathe, take a deep breath, keep your eyes open, bend your knees and elbow, and relax. And certainly being in good physical condition would help you. That's when you need that. And then it'll help you to get to the next process. After every event, whether it's an accident or an attack, whatever it may be, you need to go back, as difficult as it may be, and review it. Now, if it's sexual assault or if it's some kind of a horrible assault against you, you may want to do so with a counselor. But what happens is when you go back and review it, it helps you put everything into perspective. And maybe you'll say, well, I could have done it a different way, but because of this, this is the way it happened. Now, I want you to keep something in mind. It's never the fault of the victim to be the victim. It's always the fault of the perpetrator. Do not let the blame or the fault be misdirected into you as the victim. It's not your fault. Sure, we want to do all we can to protect ourselves, but ultimately, whoever is the assailant or the attacker, it's their fault. I want you to learn how to use your cell phone, learn how to use your home alarm. I want you to have contact information handy. And your billfold, it's good to have your name, phone number, address, as well as those people you need to get a hold of. Now, we may think, well, why do I need to have my name and my address and phone number? You know, even beside your bed, I think it's a good idea. Let me tell you what happens. When you are nervous in the midst of an emergency, sometimes we forget our own name. We forget our address. We forget the simple things. It just doesn't come to us. But if you have it written in large print, it'll help. I had a woman one time say, well, Officer Morris, if I write down my name and my address and phone number, if they break in, they know where I live. Well, they already know that, don't they? It's good to have it. It'll be very helpful. Also, there are a lot of DVDs and books and resources available. I have several books and DVDs and email newsletter I'll be glad to send you. For more information on that, if you'll just email me, look at it on the website, richardmorriskarate.com. Finally, the fourth P is preparedness, or to be prepared. We need to learn to be assertive. That sounds easy, doesn't it? Especially for those of us who are shy. I was so shy in 8th grade and back in the 6th grade that I stood in front of the class to read a poem or to give a talk, and I began to cry. But Chuck Norris did the same thing, so I feel all right about it because he's Walker, Texas Ranger. But see, all of us have something that holds us back, and for me it was being shy. But I'm going to show you how to learn. Now, I do know that we have to learn to be confident. And the way to do that is by physically practicing, by studying. The only way we can develop that confidence is, again, using the mind and the body and the spirit. I want you to work very deeply in developing that confidence by doing practical things, self-defense and so forth. Another thing that we fear, again, is that public speaking. According to U.S. News and World Report and Time Magazine, public speaking is the greatest among fears of Americans today. They're more afraid to get in front of people and talk than they are to die by fire or by drowning. It's scary sometimes to get in front of people. So I recommend that you do this. Get in front of a mirror. Now for me, I think that's how God gave me that sense of humor. I have a chance to look in the mirror and already I feel better because I think I at least look funny. When you get in front of the mirror, it gives you a chance to look yourself in the eyes. And as easy as that sounds, it's kind of hard at first. But you look in the mirror and I want you to look confident. You may say, well, Richard, I can't look in front of the mirror like that. Well, of course you can. Remember when you began to date, you looked in the mirror and you practiced having the good looks on your face, and practice your smile, even practice your laugh, ha ha ha, or whatever your laugh may be. But you practice that stuff just in case the right fella or in case the right person came along. We all do that. But this time I want you to get in front of that mirror and I want you to practice looking confident. I'm going to tell you something. I've been in a lot of fights. I've been in some gunfights and I get scared. But when I'm afraid, I don't want to have them see that. I want them to see I'm still confident as a warrior. Don't let them see the fear. The only way to have that is by getting in front and by practicing. Sometimes what we need to do is get involved with what we fear the most. A lot of people are afraid of flying, so they'll take an airplane trip. Maybe you're afraid of heights, so you'll look out the glass door of an elevator. It may sound rough to do that for many of us, but if we will face our enemy, face our fear, I think it's going to be very helpful. Getting in physical condition helps you. If you get in shape, you get yourself in good physical condition, you feel strong, you'll feel better, you'll function better, and things will work better for you, and that'll give you a great deal of confidence. Another thing is in learning, and the way that I teach is through stress inoculation. Let me explain that. Stress inoculation is much like a vaccination. You get a safe introduction of a virus into your system. For example, smallpox. The smallpox virus can kill you. But what they do when they give you a vaccination is they give you a safe injection of that virus. The virus is dead, but it still builds up antibodies. In other words, the virus itself is not going to hurt you because of the condition it's in. So when they give you the injection, then it helps you build up antibodies, and you can then protect yourself against that virus. Well, practicing self-defense is that way. By practicing self-defense in a physical environment, learning to block and to shield and the knee and the punch and the kick and so forth, gives you a safe means of protecting yourself against these violent assaults. In other words, if you make a mistake, they're not going to hurt you. So in a karate school or a self-protection class, this is one way you can do it. You have a safe environment to learn to protect yourself against dangerous techniques. And in doing these techniques, we'll use a lot of distractions. We can distract the 5 senses. For example, I could yell, or I could move my hands and distract them visually, or I could even turn and look. I can distract by physical motion and pain, for example, moving here, or by pain such as pinching the arms, or by a punch. All these distractions, what they'll do is they'll buy you tenths of seconds to get away. Like if they grab me, I can distract them and then, right then, use something to help me get away. Now we're going to move towards physical self-defense. And today I have with me my daughter Michelle. She's a second-degree black belt in karate and taekwondo. And she's 23, but she's been in martial arts with me for 21 years. I put my kids on the mat pretty early because we had a karate studio and she's learned how to fight. Now, by her being smaller in size does not give her a disadvantage at all. We may think, well, if someone's bigger than you, does it give you a disadvantage? Well, it can, but it can also give you a great advantage by learning the range of fighting. For example, if I'm here, I'm too close to punch her. She's just right to hit me strike me in the nose. But I'm too close. I'd be in an awkward position here. If I'm here, I'm too close to elbow her, but she's just the right position where we can hit me. So what we have to do is learn the ranges, and I'm going to cover that quickly. The first range is going to be if they're this close, if they're grabbing a hold of you, how to get out of that range. The second is how to be at this range here to be able to strike them, and I'm going to show you a few techniques today. The third range is if you're at a range for, say, punching that person right in here or kicking in the side of the leg with what we call a Muay Thai kick. And the fourth range, I'm too far away to hit, and so is she, but she can kick me from here. So this is range number 4. So we have to know our range. And again, while we're a different physiology, I weigh more than twice as much as she does. She has to remember, like Sun Tzu says, we have to know our enemy and know ourselves. And know my advantages as well as my weaknesses. Know her strengths and know her weaknesses. We're going to start off in a natural position. It's called a kyphotic position. This is lordotic, and it's very awkward. I can't protect myself here. But a kyphotic position is when you bend here, put your hips back, and you put more of your weight on the balls of your feet, like this, and your hands up. So put your hands up. I'll be sideways, and Michelle will face you in the front. This is awkward, and I don't have any balance. But here, on the balls of my feet, and sitting on the ground, this is where I'm in a better position to protect myself. Remember, we spoke of a moment ago, this is the monk's position, and this is the shield position. Let me show you how that works. Now, Michelle is going to block with what's called the ulnar blade of her arm. The ulna is the bone on the outside, on the little finger side of the arm. This part is the strongest part of that ulna. And most people, when they punch, say if I'm attacking from a punch, they come around this way. So what she's going to do is use that blade, just stand in the shield position. Watch, she won't even have to move. If I'm punching and trying to hit her, and I'm coming around, which is what most people do, all you have to do is stand like you're standing behind the shield. Don't try to catch their arm with a block. It's just dangerous, I think. I teach police officers to do this. It's very helpful. Again, she's using the ulnar blade, and I'm being blocked on the medial aspect, or this aspect of my arm here, which is where all my nerves are, all my veins and arteries and so forth. If I'm punching and I'm coming here, her bone is stronger than the muscles and the arteries and so forth in my arm. It's going to cause me injury and even a form of palsy. It causes my muscles to be where they're not strong. The more I get hit here, I hit her, I'm really the one getting hurt. And the more I do that, the weaker I become. So if she'll stay in a good, safe position like this, the likelihood is less that she'll get hit. And if I do come forward here, because you got to keep them close together, from here, it redirects the arm. Because her shoulders are on the outside of her axis. This is the axis of her body. This is the outside of that axis. And so it comes this way. If your hands are open wide, you're in trouble. If they're too close together, you're in trouble. So you have to line up your eye with your wrist with their shoulder. Watch what happens. Don't do this. Because see, it causes her to get hurt. So I'm going to show it straight from the front. Michelle, if you'll stand here, you can get a closer view. As I'm punching, watch what happens. She turns her wrist outward and blocks with the ulna, U-L-N-A. And if I'm coming in, she turns her ulna in. Don't block with the meat, block with the bone. So keep your hands together. This takes some work, doesn't it? So if I'm here, just remember you always want to use your arm as a weapon. But by doing this, it's going to help you. Another thing is if I try to push her and her hands are down, I can push her. However, if her arms are up, I can't get my hands in, or I'm redirected to the outside. I can't push her. So if you'll keep your hands in front and just with very little movement, it makes it where they don't have the ability to push you, any kind of a push or a punch. I think that's very helpful. Staying in this position too also lines you up to strike them. If you're here, you're in a position where you can open your hand. Now a lot of people teach a palm heel thrust this way. I don't, because you hurt your wrist. I do it this way, where you line up these bones with the bones in your arm. This is the radius and the ulna, and it lines up with these carpal bones. From here, open your hand like you're going to tap me on the hip, and you hit them. Just open your hand up. Whoa, that's kind of fun from here, but you be careful with your partner. Don't do this to your partner in class. By the way, will it drive someone's bone through the nose, through their skull? No. I have a student who's a pathologist. He says that's certainly a wise. I've talked to many medical examiners and pathologists, and they all say the same. But what it can do is it can cause them some congestion where they can't breathe or see. But the best place is right here in the forehead. Go light, not here, straight in. No, straight in. So you're in this position here. I strike and you, boom. Not so hard, sweetheart. Boom, boom, boom. In other words, you are not required by law to keep blocking that person all day. If they're trying to hurt you and you're afraid they're going to hurt you, you have the right legally to defend yourself. Another thing that we could do is called an elbow, and these techniques don't require near as much training. An elbow, a lot of people do where you rotate around, but the kind of elbow I do is differently done. It's more of a thrust here. And a lot of people, I told you she grew up on the mat. Here, boom, or up here. Now, what I like to do is instead of coming here, I go across the body. I meet my forearm with their sternum, and the reason for that is if I just meet the muscle, I can push through. But if it stops the sternum, it's much like putting a jack stand under the frame of the car. It holds that frame away. So by her putting her hand, arm, elbow there, I cannot grab her, I cannot get her in a bear hug. And so this is a good way to keep somebody off of you. The next one is called a knee. Most people knee this way, and that's not very effective. You want to come out here and come in. The reason for that is the rectus abdominis muscles, the six-pack right here, is very, very strong. Some people as much as 2.5 inches thick, according to one of my students who's a surgeon. Some people are smaller and some are bigger muscles. If you hit them here, they're protected. If you hit them in the groin, sometimes it doesn't hurt, especially if they're on drugs. But if you can hit them beside the rectus abdominis muscles, then you're getting inside to the ribs and to the organs. Or if you strike on the inside of the leg, this is called the femoral triangle. You have the nerves and the artery and the vein. And the veins and arteries are about as big as your little finger. If you can stomp or hit them here, it's almost like stepping on their heart. So as I'm here, and say if I'm in that one position, he's going to put her hand behind here. Use your other leg, watch Michelle. Behind here, and that keeps me from folding and moving back. Lift your leg up, a leg where they can see, and drive your knee in easy. Notice that she's not going to here, but she's going to the outside. Again, the reason for that is it's going around that protective muscle. Brings up a point. If I'm fighting someone, or if I'm in a position where I'm about to get hurt, or somebody attacks me, I don't want to turn sideways and give them that vulnerable position. Instead, I want to have my hands in front, and if they do hit me in the stomach, they're going to hit me in this rectus muscle to give me that great deal of protection. Another thing we're going to do as we finish up is called a forearm strike. The forearm strike starts here and folds and comes this way. This goes to the brachial plexus. It's a plexus or a group of nerves and muscles that control the head and the neck. If I strike it here, fold, or I chop in this manner here, it causes the nerves to go into palsy. It's very effective. Go very easy for you, Michelle. Like if I punch here, so they can see, and strike here to the neck. You want to bend your arm and you fold it. Boom. Again. Boom. And the other way to do it is simply to strike back this way. Like if I'm here, say if I'm trying to punch and I miss, and strike, boom. The reason I go to the neck is one, it doesn't cause as much of a serious injury. if I go here to the side, but it has terrific effect. It's the easiest way to knock somebody, render them unconscious, and to make them where they can't come and attack me, because it causes all the nerves and the muscles to literally shut down from here down. And if that happens, they can't grab you, they can't chase you, and at least it gives you time to get away. Most women, by the way, are grabbed from behind. Remember, the bully is the one that attacks somebody smaller, so I'm going to depict the bully, even though certainly I wouldn't pick on anybody, especially my daughter. But they'll grab from behind oftentimes. And what I want you to do, Michelle, is just turn here. Now, by her turning, what that does is it takes the pressure off the choke this way, and I lose all that control over her. And then she's going to grab my elbow with her hands and just drop to the ground, and it's called a sacrifice throw in judo. What happens is, even though she's small in size, I can't hold her up out here. So as I grab her here, turn quickly, and down to the ground. Now from here, with the right hand, you can go again to that throw, bam, and hit them in the side of the neck. It's one of my favorite places. Or you can strike them right here. Not too hard, baby. Okay, good job. By the way, this brings up one more point. It's good to learn in a practical physical self-defense class, because oftentimes women are not used to physical contact. They very seldom box or play football. And so by getting into a class, learning how to hit someone and finding out that everything's going to be okay if you do, it gives you a sense of security and knowing that you can do something. I look forward to hearing from you. If you have any questions, remember, you can reach me at richardmorriskarate.com.